Good morning. Give me a second to get set up here. All right. I'll manage. I'm good. Thank you. All right. I'm following suit like my husband today. I've got a whole thing prepared for you. Actually, I don't need that one yet. Can you hide it for me? Thank you. No sneak peeks. So this morning, we sang that song. Matt came out with some prophetic worship. Jesus, take my life. Jesus, take my heart. I give you all of me. You know, this morning, God is speaking so loudly to us. And I hope that you catch it. I hope that you hear it, because he has one message this morning. He just wants us. We're going to talk about what that might look like this morning. So I prepared a great introduction. So we're going to go with my great introduction. All right. We live in a generation of hashtags. Yeah? All right. Live your best life. YOLO. Work hard, play hard, loving life, and everyone's favourite, blessed. Okay, just to mention a few. But you know what? We use these phrases so frivolously. We forget what they actually mean. You know, I can put a picture of me sailing away on a boat down the French Riviera with the most amazing sunset and a glass of something amazing in my hand, and write underneath that photo on Instagram, hashtag blessed, hashtag living my best life. But you know what? A week later, I'm going to be back in the office, staring at my computer, doing the daily grind. And it is anything but living my best life. So how do we live Instapost to Instapost? Or for people who aren't social media inclined, how do you live vacation to vacation? How do you live big event that you're working towards to big event that you're working towards? What about the in-between? What about the process? How do we live in these parts? So you'll be glad to know today is not a social media lesson for you. But what it is we're going to talk about how do we live in the in-between? How do we live in these moments? And it's about choosing to live well. And we're going to call it stewardship. So I bet each one of you here today, no matter how old you are, wants to live your best life. Am I right? Good, glad. I'm in the right place. You want to live a life that's worthwhile. You want to live a life of substance. You want to be remembered long after your life on earth finishes. Well, at least I know I do. And not just for being good, but for doing good as well. So how do we do it? How do we live our best life? How do we live inspired lives? How do we live loving life? It's an attitude and it's a choice. And it's something that's going to help us stay the path. It's called, as I said, stewardship. Now, it's so much more than living the dream. And it's so much more than looking after my money well. If I can get that first slide now, Daniel, that'll be awesome. Stewardship is what we're going to explore today. Now, I feel the need to explain this here for you. You're going to get insight today into how my brain works. This is Stuart the Minion, and I just can't think of the word Stuart without thinking of Stuart. So today, Stuart the Minion is going to appear many times throughout my slides, because this is what I think of. Now, please don't Google what it's like to be Stuart the Minion. He's a very bad example of a good Stuart. He's always the minion getting up to mischief and trying to avoid doing things. So don't be Stuart the Minion. But this is how my brain works. So we're going to talk about being good stewards today. So when I envision you being a steward, I envision you being a little like this, okay? So the first definition is this. It's the theological, or fancy word for Bible, belief that humans are responsible for the world and should take care of it. I want you to notice the highlighted word, humans. It doesn't say Christians, it says humans. So no matter where you're at with God today, you are responsible for the world that you live in. You are responsible to leave it better than you found it. You are responsible to be a good steward of the world we live in, and not just the physical earth, but people too. So our next definition, and this one is going to bring it home for us today in terms of what we're going to be talking about specifically, but it says managing everything God brings into your life in a manner that honours God and impacts eternity. You see, if you're a follower of Jesus, you have a really big responsibility, because you know what? He's given you everything that belongs to him. It was his first, and now he's given it to you. How do I know that? Psalm 24:1 tells us, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world, and all who live in it. You know, our lives, our little lives, we're here for a minute and then like a vapor, we're gone. Our little lives are actually worth a lot more than we think. You know, they have power to impact and mark an entire generation and leave a legacy beyond our earthly existence. But you might think, Rose, it's not for everyone. You know, this world changer business, it's just not for me. You know what? Do you think that the disciples who walked with Jesus thought they were going to be world changers? They were tax collectors and fishermen. Do you think that they thought in 2,000 years they're still going to be telling my story? I don't think they thought that. They were just living life. But you know what? They were convinced of who God was. They were convinced of the power of God and what the power of God could do. And so they lived their life in a manner that honoured God and impacted eternity. So stewardship is a choice. It's an attitude. It is not a personality trait. You don't say either I got it or I don't. If you are a born-again believer here today, you have Christ in you. So you have the absolute potential to be a good steward. Nay, like my use of the word nay, a great steward, because you have Jesus living inside of you. So you know what? The way you steward your life, really fancy word for saying the way you choose to live, it will not only be seen while you live and breathe, but it'll be about your legacy as well. You know, I wrote, you choose the story that will get written about you by the story you write while you live. Pretty cool, huh? I wrote that. So if you're going to put that on Instagram, can you quote me, please? Thank you. #bro said that. Okay, but today, my prayer is that we live and steward everything God brings into our life in a manner that honours God and impacts eternity. I've got to face it that way. Promise I turned it on, Daniel? Aha. Good. All right. So today, my stewardship impacts eternity. How I live matters. Can you say that with me? My stewardship impacts eternity. How I live matters. If you remember nothing else today, I know that Stuart will be imprinted in your brain, but if you remember nothing else, walk out of this building remembering your stewardship, the way you live your life, impacts eternity, and how you live matters. Your choices, your friendships, what you choose to eat, drink, what you do with your body matters. Who you choose to make friendships with and relationships with, and how you conduct yourself in those relationships matters. What you're like at work, at uni, at school matters. How you choose to express your views might be about politics, God, religion. How you choose to express those views matters. How you raise your family matters. How you treat your spouse matters. How you look after your money and your resources matters. And it matters from now. It's not something you suddenly do when you reach a certain age. You can't think, oh, when I get a full-time job, I'll be a good steward. Oh, when I hit retirement, it'll be much easier, I'll be a good steward. It actually starts from when children are very, very young. Parents who teach their children, pack up your toys when you're finished, clean your room when you're done, put things back where they go, treat people well. This is how we share. It starts from very, very young stewardship. Now, some of us develop it well. Some of us like to push the boundaries, like my 8-year-old who's not in the room right now. I mean, she'll always tuck things away where they shouldn't go and hide things in places, and I'll find them later. And it's my job as a parent to say, Mummy said you need to put that back where it goes. Pick it up, let's go do it. So that stewardship in its earliest form looks like that. But young people, give me a holler. Who still lives at home with mum and dad? Anyone? Well, you're being very quiet. I know there's more than just a couple of you. You don't know. I know. This is for you, young people. Parents, you can thank me later. Stewardship for you, if you live at home with your mum and dad, starts with respecting their property, respecting their boundaries, respecting them, respecting their rules and curfews. Young person, what you sow, you're going to reap. But you know what? You start to develop stewardship from now, and your life is going to be so much larger than you could have imagined as you get older. Stewardship increases your capacity and who you are. So stewardship is something we learn. And this morning, as I walked into the building, actually, the Holy Spirit spoke something to me. He said, tell them that stewardship is freedom. You could actually sit here today thinking, oh my gosh, he's listing off a really long list of do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that. And you could feel a little bound by rules. That's not Jesus. And that's not the Holy Spirit. Jesus is freedom, and stewardship is freedom. See, when we understand what it is to live our lives well, when we understand what it is that God doesn't put boundaries or ideas in place around our lives to confine us, he actually gives us the space to be free and know, this is my zone, this is where I can grow. When the Holy Spirit, it shows you that, man, there's just such a sense of, oh, I don't have to worry that I'm not going to have the money to do what I need to do because I look after things well. I don't have to worry that I'm not going to have resources to sow into other things and expand from myself because I live my life well. I don't have to worry that I can send my children off to somebody else's home and think, oh my goodness, how are they going to behave when they're there? Because I know that how they behave in my home and how I'm stewarding them to live. So you need to realize that it's freedom. It's not rules and things like that today. You know, each one of us is called to be a world changer. Do not be deceived into thinking you are insignificant. And surely it doesn't matter. I mean, who's watching? Well, God. But people are watching you more than you realize. Your display of stewardship gives people insight into who God is and what he does in your life. And I'm going to quote a little Marty McFly for you here. Heavy. Think about that. Your stewardship and how you live shows people who Jesus is. What a responsibility, but what a privilege. Okay. So every person here is going to have their own sphere and stage of influence. Your capacity is not going to look like my capacity. You know, your bank account's not going to look like my bank account. Your time is not going to look like my time. But you know what? And the other thing I think about is too, we all have our own place of influence and we'll never know the full impact of the life we live this side of eternity. So you've got to make that decision, have that resolve. I'm going to live my life. I'm going to live my life well. And then when you get to heaven, God's going to show you all these things that happen as a result of what you did. And then you're going to be like, whoa. You know, I'm waiting for the whoa moment when I get to heaven because I won't know all the things that I've done. But, you know, it starts with a choice. Some of you in this room today, your point of changing the world is going to be you are going to raise such a strong, godly family that the testimony of your family is going to show people who Jesus is and they'll find Christ. Some of you are going to study and become specialists in your field. You are going to find groundbreaking research and answers that's going to change the medical field, the technological field, the scientific field. Some of you are going to be amazing evangelists that you have to tell everyone you encounter the story of Jesus. Some of you will be preachers, musicians, politicians, nurses, doctors. The list goes on, but each one of you is called to change the world in your sphere of influence. You know what? You're called to change the world within this family that you're in. God has put you in a church family, and he's mandated this church with a vision, and he's given us plans and purposes. One thing you have to understand if you're going to be part of this family is we are not called to mediocre living. We're not called to just exist or merely survive. This church is called to thrive. Yes. This church is called to grow, and it's called to live large and steward all it has in a way that honours God and impacts eternity. So MCC is called to stewardship that impacts eternity. So what this family does and how we live as a collective, wait, that's not my slide. What happened, Daniel? How we live as a collective matters. Daniel will fix that for me because he's awesome. Still not my slide, but that's okay. So this is some of our core values. We love furiously, give generously, and serve enthusiastically. We are raising and becoming sold-out followers of Jesus. We're about growing resilient families and individuals. We're working together with those around us to shape a better, safer, and more vibrant community. We live in the knowledge that God requires us to take responsibility for his created planet and its environment. There it is. These are all the qualities of a good steward. So to be part of the family here at MCC means to say, I'm in. I'm all in. Now, a couple of weeks ago, my husband Tim was up here and he talked about us needing 100% participation. You know, the body cannot work, this body cannot work if it's not all in. If I want to move my foot, but my central nervous system decides it's not going to send the messages and the impulse up my spine and up and down my brain and tell that foot to move, it's not going to move. And that was a really quick, probably really bad biology lesson for you, but you get the gist, okay? And it's the same with the church. If we want to see it, if I want to see it grow and thrive and become all it's supposed to be, but we can't have 100% buy-in, it won't happen either. So stewardship requires action. Every story that Jesus told about good stewards had two kind of categories of people in it. There was the lazy person who didn't do the right thing or do what they were supposed to do, and they were the one who got in trouble for not looking after things well. And then there was the wise, prudent person who took action and did something with what they had. That's what we want to be like today. That's the role model that we have, the person who takes action, who does something with what they have. So stewardship is a conviction that says, as you saw the slide before, my stewardship impacts eternity. How I live matters is a conviction. Now we're going to talk about someone who's an outstanding example of stewardship, someone who you may not know a lot about. His name is Nehemiah. Now, the story of Nehemiah is found in the middle of the Old Testament. And if you don't know too much about him, don't feel too bad, because till a couple of weeks ago, neither did I. Okay, so I'm going to give you a really quick rundown of Nehemiah today. And I'm not so much going to draw out every chapter and verse for you. That's for you to do during the week, because you're going to be so enthralled by what I'm going to share. But I'm going to give you a rundown of what happened in the life of Nehemiah. So he lived around 450 BC, thereabouts, because no one here was really there, so we're guessing, okay? And he was the cup-bearer to the king. So in those days, the king had someone who tasted his wine and his food before he did to make sure no one was trying to kill him. And Nehemiah had that very important job. So I would guess Nehemiah had to be a pretty faithful, trustworthy person to end up in that position. So would you agree he was probably a good steward? Yes. Mm-hmm. All right, me too. Now, Nehemiah was a regular guy. He wasn't a priest, wasn't a prophet. He was a regular guy. Any regular people here today? Me too. All right, good. So we can relate to Nehemiah a little. Now, Nehemiah had heard about the sad state of affairs of his people. See, he was originally from Jerusalem, of the tribe of Israel there, and he had heard how the basic story is 150 years prior, King Nebuchadnezzar, like the guy who threw the people in the furnace, he tore down the walls of Jerusalem. And so for 150 years, Jerusalem lived without walls. Now, walls were important back in those days because they defended the city and protected them. And they tried many times to rebuild these walls and failed every single time. Now, this is not a picture from then because they didn't have cameras back then. But imagine, this is something what it probably looked like all the way around. Bit of structure left, a whole heap of rubble for 150 years. So Nehemiah's heartbroken. He's like, what do I do about this? So he prays, and then the king can see something's up. He's like, Nehemiah, what's the deal? And Nehemiah shares what's going on. The king says, well, what do you want to do? He says, I want to go and build the walls. He says, well, what can I give you? The king gets on board and is behind the vision because he can see that Nehemiah is one who stewards well and handles what is in his hands well. So the king provides what Nehemiah needs. Nehemiah goes. All right? And then he gets there, and what he does is pretty amazing. He doesn't get there and go, off to work, guys, let's do this. Spends a bit of time on his own, surveying the damage, praying. I believe in that time, God probably downloaded to him the plan of what needed to happen because he always prayed before he did anything. So he prayed. God probably gave him the plan, and then he got the people together. And he says this. He says, face it, we're in a bad way here. Jerusalem is a wreck. Its gates are burned up. Come, let us build the wall of Jerusalem and not live with this disgrace any longer. I told them how God was supporting me and how the king was backing me up. So that's a pretty inspirational little speech right there, yeah? So the people saw not only that Nehemiah was all in, but that God was with him. So the people are like, yep. Anyway, the people were like, yeah, Let's do this. Let us rise up and build. And they set their hands to the good work. Or as you've got the Message version up there, we're with you. Let's get started. And they rolled up their sleeves, ready for the work. Now you have to understand, these were not professional builders. They were people of different tribes. They were people of different skills, talents, professions, abilities, all of different socioeconomic statuses, okay? But they came together what? For one purpose, okay? They came together to put their hand to the good work. And Nehemiah modeled this. He didn't sit back and just kind of go, you over here do this, you over here do that. No, he was in the thick of it. Nehemiah was leading by example. He was doing the good work himself. Now, did these people face opposition? Did they face ridicule? Was it easy? But you know what? They did it. And they did it in 52 days. They built a wall that had been knocked down for 150 years in 52 days. You know, by the way, I want you to know we're not talking about a small wall here. It's 2.5 miles, so we're thinking almost the length of 4 Sydney Harbour bridges. 52 days, okay? So they didn't have all the fancy excavators and things that we have today either. It was Stone Age equipment, guys. And they were working with the rubble on the ground, and they had to rebuild the walls. But do you know why they did it? I'm going to tell you, but I hope you know why. Because they had 100% buy-in. Everyone had a role. Every man, every woman, every child had a role. Everyone was doing something, and everyone took what they had in their hand to share, and they did something with that. So what's the point of me sharing the story of Nehemiah? I think it's the story of two things. It's a story of a lot, but I'm going to draw two things out of it. It demonstrates Nehemiah's stewardship because he used his influence to impact eternity. He used his influence to honour God and leave the world physically a better place than the way he found it. But even more than that, it's our story. Let me tell you how it's our story. It's the story of people who were able to come together, put aside their differences for a common cause and say, yeah, let's build the walls. Let's put our hands to this good work. No one was disqualified from participation. Each one took their time, their talent, their resources, their abilities and invested it to see what they could do, to see what God could do. And that's why they accomplished it, because there was 100% buy-in. They stewarded what they had well over that season. Now, this is a really quick view of Nehemiah, guys, but this so echoes for me what we could be like. Just imagine if we, the church, could do this. Imagine if we stopped just talking about what we could do and we went and did it. I mean, you saw the young adults give testimonies. There has to come a point where we stop talking about it and we go knock on someone's door. We have to own it. Owning it simply means committing to pray for it and taking your place to see it happen. It's really easy to own it. I commit to pray, just like Nehemiah, and then I take my place to see it happen. I pray and I take action. I pray and I take action. You know, I'm going to be really honest. This was hard slog, putting this all together to chat with you today. It was hard slog, and I couldn't understand why it was such hard slog when I'd been preparing well and taking my time and doing all those things. But then I had a moment, I think it was yesterday, where I just sat down on my computer and it just kind of jumped out what I really wanted to say. So I'm not going to apologise for what I'm about to say, but I'm going to tell you it's unfiltered. Okay. This is me, guys. This is about to get me. I don't want to be the generation of Israelites who lived with the walls down. I'm done with that being the way church is. I'm not going to live 150 years without the walls up. Okay? I want to build. I want to see my life and this church be all it can be. I do not want to stand around speculating and imagining what we could actually do without doing anything. I want to be Nehemiah. I want to be someone who comes in, surveys the damage, prays, gets up, and puts a plan into motion. I do not want to get to the end of my life and realise it could have only taken 52 days. 52 days. I don't want to be circling for 150 years. Imagine the people who lived with that wall down for almost their whole life. Imagine if they were 70 or 80 and they watch 52 days. Wow. It's up. Imagine. You know, it only took 52 days because someone believed in the cause enough to give their all, and that's why everybody else jumped on board. Unity is what does it, guys. Common cause is what does it, and commitment does it. You know, the people who have gone before us in this church, I think we're about 37 years old, coming on to our 38th year, something like that. Yeah. The people who've gone before us have set a firm foundation. And I want you to know that every person here who has their hand to the plough at the moment has 100% buy-in. But I want 100% of all of us to have 100% buy-in. You know, it's not enough to stand up the front and go, yeah, I can support that. Great idea, and do nothing about it. It's just really not enough. You know, and we are not rebuilding the walls of a city. We're rebuilding people's lives. We're restoring a community. We are rescuing a city. How important is that work? You know, the other thing that we have to realise about stewardship is we will not roll up our sleeves for the vision until we know what it's going to take to steward personally first. You cannot steward corporately if you're not doing it personally. So this is what my hope is. My hope is that you're sitting there feeling slightly uncomfortable, and that when you go home on your drive in the car or while you're helping us at the working bee, don't go home, while you're helping us at the working bee, you've got cogs turning in your head going, God, what do I need to change? God, what do I need to think differently? How do I need to act differently? How do I need to conduct relationships differently? God, how do I need to manage my money and my resources differently? What is it about stewardship, God, that I need to adjust in my life so that I can corporately be part of stewardship? You know, every single person is invited to this. You are invited to this. God doesn't say, thou shalt be a good steward. He says, come on, there's a better way. He says, come on, we can do this. You know, if all I've done is stir your emotions today, it's not going to be worth too much. It might be a week, 2 weeks, but then the pressure's going to come on, something's going to be required of you, and you're going to be like, I'm out of here. I don't want to stir your emotions today. I want you to feel like, she's right. I know I need to do this, and I can get on board with this. So that's what I'm really asking you today. I'm really asking you, are you all in? You know, and I think the all in starts with this one question. God, what can I do? Really simple. Just 5 words. God, what can I do? So we started today talking about how our stewardship impacts eternity and how you live matters. So it matters in every aspect of our life, okay? It matters in our personal life. It matters in every aspect of our life, but specifically, we've just talked about how it matters in this family, in this house. You know, over the next couple of weeks, you're going to start to hear about plans in the pipeline and projects and things like that that this church is going to be putting into motion. That is your chance. That is your chance to respond. You might not have the skills yet. We will teach you the skills you need. You will get them, you'll get in-house training on the fly. Like, that's how we learn some of the best things. We watch someone else do it and then just go do it. You know, or you'll fly blind for a bit and work it out. I mean, really, you're safe here. It's family. But you know what? I want you to know that what you have to give is enough. Just like the children, the Israelite children, what they had to give was enough. Now, I want you to understand one thing about what they gave. They didn't all give what we would term an equal gift. And God is not looking for equal gifts. He doesn't want my gift to match your gift. He's just looking for equal sacrifice. He's looking for what it costs you. He's not looking for the amount. I mean, I might have 20 hours a week and you might have 3. It makes it no less if that's honestly what you have to give. You know, it's like if you know the story of the widow who put her mites in the offering in the temple, and, you know, the people looked at that and went, that's not very much. Jesus said, hang on a second. Her gift is worth more than the people throwing in all the silver and all the gold, because they're giving out of all their excess. It's not costing them a thing. Her, it's costing her everything. She was all in when she put down those couple of mites. She was all in. And that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about equal sacrifice. So there's just a couple of things I'd love to do today. I don't know everybody here, and I don't know where you're at in your walk with God, but I would love to invite anybody who hasn't started their personal journey with Jesus yet to do that today. So if you maybe have heard, seen what's happened here today and heard the songs and heard the message and thought, man, maybe God is real and I'd love to give him a go. Well, then I'd love to pray with you. If you haven't asked Jesus yet to be your best friend and you haven't asked him to forgive all your mistakes and you would love to have the freedom that comes from knowing you're forgiven, well, then I'd love to pray with you. So if I could just ask everyone, just close your eyes for a second, just to respect people's privacy. And if that's you today, if you'd love to say, Jesus, come be my best friend, or if you would love to say it again, you've said it once before, but you feel like you'd like to say it again, just shoot your hand up real quick and we'll just pray. Just give everybody a moment if they'd like to do that. Awesome. All right. Well, if that's you and you didn't want to pop your hand up, but you'd still like to do it, just feel free to come and see me after. I'd love to pray with you. But just in this moment, I'm just going to call for a response. Church, if it's your prayer today, if it's your prayer that you say, God, I want to live my life in a way that honours you and impacts eternity. If that's you, if you say, God, I want to say yes to you and I want to be positioned for what you're doing in this house, if that's you, I'd invite you just where you are, just stand, because we're going to pray together. So if that's you, if you say, God, I'm all in. I'm all in. You might already be all in, but you want to say, just so you know, God, I'm really all in. Just where you are, just stand up. And we're just going to pray. Daniel's going to pop the first slide up there. I'm not going to trick you into saying something you don't know what you're getting yourself into. But it's very much just a declaration of thanks to God, asking him for his help, and thanking him for all he's going to do. So if you're standing, let's read this together. Heavenly Father, thank you that you love me. You have given your all for me. Thank you that you have given into my life all that I need to partner with heaven to see your plans come to pass. Teach me to steward my life well, to use my gifts, abilities, resources, and influence to change the world around me for your kingdom. I know that my stewardship impacts eternity. How I live matters. Thank you that you have put me in this amazing church family and that together we can and will achieve all that you have planned and purposed for us. Today I choose, come on, hang on. Little bit of oomph there. Come on, today I choose to roll up my sleeves and take part in the good work to see my community changed and city restored by the love and power of Jesus. Thank you that you have put us together as diverse and unique and amazing as we may be to get the job done. Together we will host your presence well. Host the move of God in this city well, and steward all you have given us for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen. Come on, let's give him praise as I hand it back to Pastor Matt.